Mediobanca says it will launch a new €385 million share buyback program after posting its best fiscal year revenue and profit ever. The Italian lender is now forecasting earnings per share to grow between 6 to 8% this year. Alberto Nagel is the CEO of Mediobanca and joins us now. Alberto, always good to catch up. We always learn something. So look, in terms of where you're at now compared to where you want to be under your one brand, one culture strategy, the numbers look very solid today. The market has really appreciated what you're trying to do this year. Shares up dramatically as well. How far are you away from where you need to be over that 3-year period?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Well, we are quite advanced compared to our initial expectation, and this is on the back of more favorable environment, where in terms of net new money, the strength of our brand and the positioning of our wealth management is stronger than expected. And also in CIB, we had a very positive mood in the last couple of quarters. And if you add also the performance of our consumer finance and insurance, this brought an overall beat compared to our expectations. So we do think that even this year, we can be a very nice growth story in terms of revenue, but also in terms of return to shareholders.
In terms of one area you did mention, you mentioned CIB and consumer financing, but you haven't drilled in specifically yet on wealth management as well. A key priority to grow that as well. What's the competitive environment like? Because I've got to be honest, Alberto, I don't speak to anybody in that area that isn't trying to grow that aggressively. It must be a very competitive field at the moment.
Yes, it's very competitive, but if you see our numbers, we grew bottom line by 29%, and we grew our AUM base by more than 10% with more than 8 billion of net new money. And this is like the top three in terms of net new money, while we don't have the top three distribution network. This means that our brand and our positioning, which is a bit unique in Italy because of the strength of the brand, the heritage of the brand, which is linked to a number of transactions done with important family, important corporates in the past, give us a lead in terms of ability to recruit and to generate net new money. And I think this is going to be stronger even the next couple of years, because our presence in wealth management will be even more evident the more we grow.
Yeah, so
Italy, as you know, is a big market in terms of saving, has a 5 trillion of saving available, and Mediobanca is a very well-known brand in Italy.
Yeah, Alberto, I mean, outstanding fourth quarter growth there that you make a note of as well, but wanted to find out if your appetite has grown for more acquisitions as the macro improves, albeit, of course, marginally.
So when you look at our story, as we grow so fast in terms of organic net new money, you need always to compare what it takes to distract the organic growth in terms of potential M&A. And you come to the conclusion that today there are very few, if any, assets available, and the valuation are very high. So basically, today we are very much focused on gaining traction on our plan and growing even faster than 8 to 10 billion of net new money. And if then there are some available, some target of M&A available, we will look for them. But today, honestly, either they are not there or they are very expensive, and hence there is no point in going after them.
Yeah, Alberto, some of the political factors, whether it be out of France or even now, as you can see, out of the United States, then, has that had to make you change your strategy a little bit across Europe and the US in any way? And are you seeing those markets have major influence for you?
Well, in France, we have seen widening of certain credit spread and some assets under pressure. Now, the market is more in a wait-and-see mood to see what happens with the new government, and in particular with the new presidential election. So we do expect that the investor may take a pause on France up until the situation is more clear. While in Italy, we are in a privileged situation because we have a very strong government, legitimate, even more legitimate by the new European election. So we see more activity in Italy, Spain, and Portugal.
Alberto, let me talk about potentially the industry crossing swords or the industry's frustration with government. Who's who needs to move the furthest? Is it the Maloney government or is it Brussels on creating the kind of conditionality, the kind of regulations, the kind of open markets that means that Mediobanca and the rest of the investment banking industry, capital raising industry across Europe can actually proliferate and compete internationally? Is it a regional government story or a Brussels story?
It's a more a Brussels story, unfortunately, and I did share some critics about EU policy because I think that some, if not most, of the today regulation on banking is a bit outdated and is still going after the Lehman crisis. Of course, banks are much stronger thanks to those regulations and thanks to the supervision activity. But I think in terms of ability to compete, we have some weight that are deriving from this regulation that needs to be eliminated. Otherwise, financial institutions will have a tougher time to compete with the US and Asian competitors. So I think it's needed. The balance of power in the EU Parliament is not changed, but some rules, I think, have to be changed.
But it's the same leadership in Brussels. We've got from Ursula von der Leyen another vote of confidence from the European Parliament as well. I can't see how things are going to change for the better with pretty much the same management in place in Brussels.
Yeah, you are right. It's hard to see how they can change, but then there is the physical law in terms of evidence of competitiveness of European operators as opposed to American and to also the big tech. So you see revenue erosion across the line. You see losing market share. So there should be a wake-up call in Brussels about what has to be done to make the financial sector more competitive, to have less intrusive rule in terms of ability to develop the banking activity and not only play on a defensive mode. I think it's needed, and it will be also up to us to convince regulators and rulers in Brussels to change those rules.
Yeah, I mean, Alberto, that brings us to the next difficult question, unfortunately, and it's one you probably get a lot as well, and it's just that cross-border consolidation amongst the banks. What type of environment is pretty much needed then as well for that to begin to take place?
Well, cross-border, first of all, as we said many times, it's a matter of also availability of single states to let this happen, no? Because if everybody is positive and open to consolidation cross-border, but when it comes to ask availability of a bank to do a cross-border, most likely you get state member opposing this in a discreet way. So you understand that they prefer national solution to cross-border. So there has to be, again, a political will that push for a consolidation. There has to be a framework in terms of rules. Again, national rules and local regulators are, for the time being, in many cases, doing a sort of balkanization of liquidity and capital that cannot be shifted from one country to the other. So avoiding this kind of local constraint and going towards a banking union is needed. And of course, I think also one suggestion can come from the Letta new report. So creating a sort of a new virtual state in terms of status of rules. So we have a number of states members we can create, as the report is suggesting, a virtual one with a legal status and fiscal status that can be adopted in order to be basically the pattern which we can use to do a cross-border consolidation. So there are many things to be done. And up until we don't work at these, I think consolidation cross-border won't happen. What will happen is more intra-market consolidation.
Well, look, beautiful timing, Alberto. We've got about 10 seconds to go before the release of the Italian PMI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break those numbers live on CNBC, and then I'm going to get you to comment on the broader Italian economy as well, because the Italian manufacturing PMI, it's improved, but it's still in contraction territory, coming in at 47.4 versus a previous figure for June for 45.7. That's the HCOB July manufacturing PMI. I guess I'll just get your reaction to the figures we're seeing. Italy has outperformed many expectations as well, but still very, very difficult conditions. How would you typify the Italian economy, Alberto?
Yes, you are right. This is part of a broader weakness of the manufacturing sector in Europe, and also coming from weakness deriving from China. So it's worrying because Italy is the second manufacturing entity in Europe. But likely enough, we have a lot of dynamic mid-corporate entity which can find the way to grow with new production, a new type of I would say setup. While we have also the tourism and the service sector, which is becoming more important and contributing to have a GDP growth which is better than today compared to Germany, for instance, which is the largest manufacturing entity in Europe. But for sure, these weak data of manufacturing are a source of worry, and I think they will continue for the next few quarters. So again, I see a GDP growth in Europe to be modest, driven by this weakness.
Well, what a privilege for us to get the CEO of Mediobanca updating us when we've had some data out of Italy as well. Great analysis. Thank you very much indeed for that, and I look forward to you joining Arabilia and myself again soon. Alberto Nagel, thank you, sir, the CEO of Mediobanca.